Hello.
Hello, him. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Welcome to Metal Chaos.
Oh, thank you.
It's great talking to you, and after having spun the album quite a lot of times, I will have to admit.
Have you? That's cool.
So let me start right away. First of all, what happened after the release of the Sermon debut, right, in 2019, and the single show in Poland?
Well, we did get quite a good reaction from the first album, but unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and we were due pretty much on the day to fly out to play Prognosis in the Netherlands, and I think that would have been a really good show for us because the lineup was pretty much it was on the money really in terms of what we do. And I think we would have been in a very different position as a band had we done that show, honestly, because of the people that booked us. Unfortunately, in the end, that show was rescheduled 3 times. And on the third time, unfortunately, all the other people in the band who were playing the songs, they had other tours that were backed up and they were all on tour. So unfortunately, we couldn't do the third reschedule. But so not a lot happened other than me writing another album, honestly.
As you said, the debut made raised so much dust, and then what happened? Everybody was asking what happened. How did this band disappear? But yes, you are absolutely correct about the pandemic. I mean, we are still living in the aftermath of this, and I'm not sure if we will ever get through that. As far as music playing,
it was a strange. I mean, it's not. The thing is with Sermon, it's not a proper band yet. I would like it to be, but it's really just me and James doing it when he can do it. But he's touring with Decapitated. I mean, he's in Decapitated now. He's left Vader. He tours with Belphegor. He's a busy guy, and until there can be like a proper tour. It's very difficult to schedule him in really to do this. And the same with the other players. Honestly, we get offered things, but there's simply not the funding to do it. Honestly.
Yeah. So, when did you start working on of Golden Verse?
I think as soon as I signed to Prosthetic.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I signed to Prosthetic, I knew. I'd had some songs sort of floating away on a hard drive, and as soon as I signed the deal, and the album was released, I got to work straight away, and it was great. But I was in a very different mental space for that record than I was Birth of the Marvellous.
And I think that is reflected in the music, right? It's more up-tempo, more energetic this time.
Yeah,
more aggressive.
Yeah, it is. It's far more. Yeah, quite. It's more intense, I'd say. Quite blunt force.
So that clearly reflects maybe some of the frustration that came with the pandemic, not only as a band, as a musician, but I mean, the pandemic affected every single aspect of our lives, right?
Yeah, it did. I was like many people. Although actually, I have to say, some people weren't miserable. Some people were thankful for a break, but it made me quite miserable. And it's actually a miracle that this album got done, really, because it was hard. It was hard to do, and but it's not a pandemic album. The album is not about the pandemic. It's not about the struggle in it. There might be a few consequences of topics in there because of it, but broadly speaking, it's got nothing to do with it. But perhaps the frustration I felt then really came out in the music, maybe.
So, is it a concept album?
No, it's not. It's not a single story with a beginning, middle, and an end. It's a collection of different stories housed under one theme, which is abuses of power. and it's just observations really. Anything from suicidal ideation to war to trying to convert people into your way of thinking. They're just topics really about human behavior.
To be honest, I think what you just described and the short list that you presented, and I think it's more than that, as you dig through the album, is some sort, in a way, a consequence of the pandemic. Because I think, this is my theory, I think the pandemic in some cases brought the worst of people. And
yes, in some, it created that everyone sat at home. The only thing they could interact with was the news and publishing their own opinions, and that was the only sort of socializing you could do in a way. So I guess it created a stronger divide of opinion on things, and not to mention all the economic struggles and things that were a consequence of lockdowns and isolations. I think there's probably a truth to what you said.
So what about the title? Why did you choose that specific title for the album?
So there's a book it's called the Oxford Book of Modern Verse, and basically it's a collection of poems by lots of favorite poets, and it's just a collection of those. So I thought that it was a good premise for a collection of songs of different observations, but those poems I think reflect the time and society that those writers lived in, so it seemed to fit quite well. It's sort of a bit of plagiarism really, but with my own twist.
Yeah, of course. And honestly, I was thinking something that had with Pythagoras, but no, right?
Oh, what? No. You tell me your theory.
No, I was thinking that, those golden verses are attributed to Pythagoras. However, with the things that you are touching upon with the songs, I was feeling some sort of an irony, right? These are not the golden verses, but this is the opposite.
That's actually, I think I like that more than mine.
My goodness. But however, that's the beauty of music, right? You give the music to someone, an album, and they can do whatever they feel like as far as interpretation goes. So that's something that it's interesting to do.
I love that as well, actually. I think, which is why sometimes people ask, what does this song mean? What does this mean? And I'm tempted not to say anything, but then you're sort of left with nothing to say. So I think it's cool. I think I actually kind of welcome the interpretations, and it'd be nice if I agree more with them than with myself, I think.
Well, it's an open discussion, and that's exactly how the music should be. It should trigger thoughts, even deeper thinking. However, you said that it's not a great thing to do to explain yourself. However, you felt the need to talk about the distance. What was the drive to discuss that particular song?
I think because someone asks you, what is this song is coming out? What does it mean? And I try to be as sincere as I can when I'm talking about these things, or anything really. There is no front for me, and I basically had to tell the truth about it. But the problem with the truth is, it makes it look like you're exploiting the issue somewhat, and you're trying to get attention because you've written about a touchy subject, and it can make it look like I've had suicide thoughts myself, and I want sympathy, but it's not that at all. So it was quite a lengthy explanation, but it's not really about suicide ideation. It's really about distinguishing the moment between an idea and an action, and that the more that we recognize that moment, I think the better it will be for people. But for some reason, we're scared or ashamed of discussing it. But I actually had an interview with a podcast, and he revealed that he had just the day before had some suicidal thoughts, and I have to say it was I think I handled it okay, but it was quite it really affected me. It really affected me. Mm-hmm. I felt very responsible for him saying that, because I'd myself talked about it. So I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't romanticize suicide at all. I don't think of that.
I wouldn't look at this from that point of view. I mean, some things, some issues that a lot of people have, sometimes it helps for people to speak up, speak out, even admitting that they had some issues. I'm not talking about suicide, everything for that matter. We need to be frank with ourselves to begin with, and in order to do that, we need to be frank with everyone.
I agree. Actually, I agree with you, and you've got it absolutely right. I think it was just there's so many feelings that I had when that was said to me on an interview.
Oh yeah.
That suddenly I became aware that I was publishing what was coming out of my mouth, and it might not have been correct, and it might have been received in a way that I'd not intended. But I think you're correct. It should be more open. It should be discussed more, and it's the only way to not feel ashamed about it. And I think it's a good way of preventing it.
Yeah, because we live in a society that we like to put our best, let's say, face out, but most of the times it's not the reality. And society has kind of forced us to do that. You have to put your best face everywhere right now, even when you're posting comments online. Anyways, so what I'm trying to say is that I appreciate when bands or famous, let's say, people do that. It helps rather than causes damage.
I hope so. I hope it's not. I think it depends on how it's done, because I know that there used to be bands that would advocate kind of self-harm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I don't advocate that in a way. I don't, because then it romanticizes a thing, and I think seeking help is a much better thing to advocate rather than to try and hurt yourself.
Yeah. Okay, let's move from that.
We're getting deeper into the hole.
Yes. we are close to entering the rabbit hole and never get out of it. I want it because I like, and I don't have the lyrics with me. Hopefully, I will get them with the vinyl. I like the almost a pun. Wake the silent, right? We used to say wake those who are asleep, but is this about for waking up the people who have an opinion to say but they don't? Or am I overthinking things?
I actually, that's interesting. Actually, I'd actually considered it about the people who tried not to have an opinion, or were too scared to have one, and actually didn't have one because of it. The opposing side trying to get them to agree with them.
Yes.
Essentially,
yes.
That's what it's about.
And
there's a lyric in there that's "feed the ears of lambs." I think that encapsulates it.
Yes,
quite well.
I definitely see that now. For this, the music side of things, and we said that it's not a concept. However, there is some sort of a thread connecting the songs. And for example, Sender. I love how you shift from the calmness, let's say, of Sender, and then into Departure with that has almost blast beats there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So this was done in purpose, correct?
Yeah, totally. I needed it couldn't have gone straight into the next song. It needed that kind of breathing space between Golden and Departure.
Yeah.
To get to the intensity of that kind of blast beat. It's the most intense moment on the album, and I think it could only live at the end of the album.
I agree. And am I right when I say that it was James' input on this one, because of his, let's say, black metal past with Behemoth, Vader, and so forth?
In a way, I know I was going to work with James again. So when I was doing the demos, I was like, well, if I program a blast beat, I know that James can play it. You have to. There's a few rules you have to stick to when doing it. You have to, he can't go over 280 BPM, as much as I think Vader tried a couple of times. It's just too fast. So you have to find the limitations and like what's going to make it sound good when you're singing over it, and actually give the impression of speed as well at the same time, because actually the guitar part underneath is very slow. So yes, he had a lot to do with it. I knew he could do it, so I included it.
And you recorded the album in Grandstone Studios with Scott Atkins. What was Scott's input aside from producing and mixing?
I love working with Scott because basically he pushes the performances beyond actually being skilled at what he does. He knows when someone's hitting their maximum, and that's why he's really good to work with. So in that sense, he can make something sound not like a demo because he can make all the parts shine. I always think of it like book binding. So if when you make a book, you often receive it as like a Word document, and that's all it is until basically someone binds it together with glue and beautiful material and it's stitched nicely. That's essentially what he does. He makes the content better. You interpret it in a different way because he pushes things in a certain direction. But in terms of songwriting, he doesn't tend to change very much with my songs, I don't think. I give him a fairly well-formed demo, and then we'll kind of add ideas here and there, like what kind of reverb is there going to be? Like what, could there be like a spacey guitar part here? Or do we need to add in like a little extra section here, which I think he did on The Distance. So that's kind of his role. He's crucial, honestly.
Yeah. What about the cover artwork? Is there any connection between, again, the lyrics, the title, and the cover artwork?
It's an analogy. It's a very intricate door. It's made of very complex rules, and I liked that when you receive the vinyl, when you open up the artwork, the door's state changes. I won't ruin it for you, but it's calm, and then it explodes, and then it's empty. And for me, it's kind of a nice analogy for things that happen in the world in a way. Yeah. We try and live by all these complex rules, but it's hard to.
Of course.
And it doesn't work all the time. So that's kind of what the cover means. It's not very literal, for sure. It's just a kind of a beautiful, ornate thing.
Yes, we kind of do that. We have a different, let's say, front on our stores. And we tend to hide what's happening behind the backstage.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Yeah. So what are your plans? We said that after the release of the debut, the pandemic hit and you missed some live opportunities. What are your plans right now after the release of the album? What do you want to do?
Well, I know what I'd like to do, but there aren't any plans really because it's just very difficult. Until we don't have a very big audience, so we have to see how people are going to react to this album and if it's going to take us anywhere. Essentially, I'd like to do a London show. Mm-hmm. I think a one-off London show would be good because I think a lot of people don't know what we're going to sound like live. Even if they book us, it's a real risk for them because they don't know what they're going to get, and that's fair enough. So there isn't any plans really, which is a shame. But it's just kind of the world we live in at the moment.
Yes,
I think it's
true.
It's hard enough to tour, even if you're an established band, you're always losing like tens of thousands just trying to promote your record, and it's not sustainable.
No, it's not.
So we'll see what would happen, and I'm hoping that we will get on some festivals. I think that's really manageable for us, and I'm not sure we'll get on this year's festivals, but let's see next year.
And this question may sound silly, but how many musicians do Sermon have on stage?
It's a good question. We have, ideally we're going to have 7, and it will be myself, vocals. There will be 2 guitar players, bass, keyboards, drums, and extra percussion, and maybe extra vocals. Actually on the first album there's lots more percussion layers than on this album. But I think it's probably more likely to be 6 people, because I don't think there's enough extra percussion to justify bringing another person on the road just yet. But I think the keyboard player could do some of the extra percussion parts.
Yeah, that sounds expensive.
Yes, it is.
Sorry, my apologies for laughing on that, but
no, right. It's true, and it is kind of funny because, especially for a band that has no money.
Right, kind of a cliche. I'm sure this is a cliche question. What does the mask represent?
So I think it serves a few purposes. The first is it helps me distance my own name from the music, because I rely every day on my actual job, on my name somewhat. So when people type my name into Google, they'll see what I do for money rather than Sermon. The second thing is I get stage fright, and for some reason it's like armor. It's almost like protection, and I never realized that until we actually did a show, that it really, really helped with the nerves. And then third, it helps me design the kind of visuals around the themes of the album. So this album is quite angry, and the mask is quite a regal mask.
Correct.
But it's also very destroyed. It's been like chiseled away at, basically scratched at, and so I think it kind of matches the look and feel, and I can see in the future there being a different one for every album, and I think it would work on stage quite well if they changed throughout, each song that was played from a different era, you just change the face.
Yeah, thank you for saying that for the mask, because when I see people performing, I have stage fright, even I'm not on stage. And I definitely see what you're talking about. It's easier to get into the role of fronting a band, not hiding, sitting behind a mask, let's say.
You can step into another personality easier, I think.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
I think it will annoy people that there's another masked band on the scene. Some people will embrace it, but I don't think it's so different to all the black metal bands who just have the same corpse paint.
Yeah,
they don't seem to get a hard time about that. So why should we, guys?
No, and in fact,
give us a break.
In fact, this works extremely well in the US market, but I think you know that.
Yeah, it seems to actually.
Yeah.
I think British people are a bit more cynical, and I think they'll be like, "Oh, this is just Sleep Token. These guys are doing what they're doing." Which I didn't even know who Sleep Token were until a couple of weeks ago, really.
Honestly, do whatever feels best for you, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I will.
Right. Last question. I was checking Birth of the Marvellous, and I've seen that has been sold out in all formats, at least in the band's Bandcamp page. Are there any plans to reprint that now that you have the second one coming out?
Oh, I'm sure if Prosthetic will probably do something about that if there's the appetite for it. Actually, I don't even think I've got a copy of it.
Oh man, You should get it. It's a good album.
Yeah. I haven't listened to it ever since, though. Ever. So,
That's bizarre.
It's, you know what it is, though? It's hard to move on from something if you keep like looking back on what you've done. I don't want to make the same thing again. When this next album comes out, I'm not sure I'll listen to it again except for rehearsals. So,
thank you very much for your time, and thank you for the album. What can I say? I wish we can see Sermon live in the States, but let's start from London, right?
God, I'd love to do the States, and hopefully when we do, we'll see you there.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your evening.
You too, man.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.